Welcome to Alpha Wolf Capital. I'm Tim, and I want to personally thank you for stopping by. This channel is designed to help small companies, both public and private, gain exposure with potential consumers, investors, even partners. Take, for example, today's guest, Brent Ness of Aclarion Inc. Aclarion is advancing the care of patients suffering from chronic lower back pain by delivering non invasive, evidence based AI SaaS, software as a service solutions to help physicians deliver personalized treatment plans to support improved clinical outcomes and help patients return to a life without back pain. This is an impact company that is going to impact a $134 billion a year uh, problem. And I'm going to let Brent tell you more about that in just a moment. This is not to be taken as investment advice. I am not a certified financial planner. This is for education and entertainment purposes only. I encourage everyone to do their own due diligence. Hey, everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Capital coming at you with this almost seems like a new interview because the first time that Brent and I actually sat down was probably about 4 years ago. Huh, Brent?
Yeah, yeah, it was quite a while ago. Time
But
flies.
I did love the story and I did still pay attention to what was happening. I did know in the back of my mind, I kind of felt like, well, you kind of were like a babe in the woods. I felt like maybe the stock market was going to be an awakening for you, right,
Yeah,
of
indeed.
sorts.
Right.
And you know what though, I got to tell you, man, I'm proud of you for still being here because
Thanks.
the market wasn't kind, was it?
Yeah. No, thanks. You're right. It was a new challenge for me to be a publicly traded company CEO and in a micro cap environment. I think that came with some bumps, particularly at the time that we came out. You might recall part of the story. We were getting advice to come out to raise 40 million on an 80 million valuation, which felt very natural to me in terms of the funding I had done in the private market with companies like Heartflow and Clearly. I knew where we were on our company life cycle in that journey towards standard of care and healthcare, and the dollars we were able to attract at the valuations we were able to attract from private market. And so the business plans that we had created around that 40 million of initial, IPO dollars would have allowed us to to deploy money into a national randomized control trial and execute with $40 million, which frankly we would still have today, but we'd be sitting here with that trial behind us with the evidence in place, and we'd just be further along. When Putin invaded the Ukraine and the markets basically closed down, you'll recall, Tim, we were the last med tech company to go public, the last one before the gate completely closed. So we didn't come out with 40 million. We came out with roughly 9 million. And then, we were looking around at each other and on the management team. It's like, okay, the work in front of us, we understand what we need to do. So we just have to do it in the leanest possible way to continue to make progress until we had enough cash through some financing activity that enabled us to launch that national control trial, randomized control trial, and now it's launched, and now we're moving forward. So part of the spending, part of the investment just needed to be put on hold. Now I'm
Right.
super proud of the work that we did in that kind of, let's just call it the desert, in that lean time, because again, we stayed focused on the strategy. We executed what we could with what we had, and we endured, to your point, really a hostile market for the micro caps. And boy, my eyes have been opened here, relative to what what that world looks like. And again, I'll tell you, I'm brimming over the top with optimism about this technology making it to standard of care someday, and really helping people with chronic low back pain and the doctors that treat them.
So
So
let's talk about let's talk about that. For those that don't
sure.
know who Aclarion is and what
Yeah.
Aclarion does, it is an artificial intelligence play, and it is not the bullshit play. It's a real artificial intelligence, right? Where there's companies out there that claim they're AI, and that's because they use Chat GPT. That's not an artificial
Yeah,
intelligence
no,
company.
no, we have yeah, we have special algorithms that we apply to MR spectroscopy data. Now, that data, when it comes out of an MRI machine, is really just, it's squiggly lines. Like nobody can sit there and really interpret that data, and especially into anything that's really clinically actionable. So we take that raw material data and we identify in that data set the biomarkers that are living inside a person's disc, their lumbar discs. And as it turns out, we've all known people that have gone to the doctor, gotten an MRI, and their doctor says, "Oh, you got a herniated disc here. You've got spondylolisthesis. You've got whatever anatomical issue that they believe is causing the pain." Here's the physician's conundrum: is sometimes that disc looks perfectly healthy, but it's full of acids. And
Okay.
when nerves grow into the disc because it's degenerating a little bit and there are acids in there, that causes pain. Now, this difficulty in accurately diagnosing that type of painful disc leads to treatment decisions that don't lead to great outcomes,
Right.
because it could very well be they don't treat the disc that is screaming off the charts in pain. We, our superpower, Tim, is we help doctors see the invisible. They can see pain where it doesn't, present itself anatomically on the MRI image or any other image for that matter. So, um, we wake up every day with the patient in mind first, and then the surgeons and pain management physicians who are trying to help those patients, to give them insight from that valuable MRI data or MRS data, spectroscopy data that comes out of the machine. So that's our augmented intelligence. That's our kind of special um, uh, value add to this vexing problem. It's a global epidemic. 266 million people around the world suffer from chronic low back pain. And I'm not talking about the weekend warrior with a little sore on Monday. I'm talking about the mom who can't take her kids to school or make them breakfast, right, because she can't get out of bed. I'm talking about people that miss work because they literally can't stand the pain. And I'm also talking about the number one cause of opioid addiction in the United States is chronic low back pain. So
Yep.
we're an incredibly mission driven team here, and we've always kept the patient in mind first. And I'm sure people with chronic low back pain,
Everybody.
and
I mean,
yeah,
literally. So I lost a friend that
yeah,
that had chronic back pain. He wound up dying of an opioid
yeah,
overdose.
yeah. I'm
Right.
sorry.
So I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
uh, so it is a issue that is personal to me.
yeah,
And when you were the one actually that told me that, Tim, this is the number one chronic pain issue out there is
yeah,
chronic back pain, right?
yeah, yeah.
Which I was shocked, but then when I think about it, it's not that shocking, right?
Right,
And
right.
then I think you also told me, and I'm going off memory here, so correct me if I'm wrong, right? I'm not a doctor. I just play one after I stay on a Holiday Inn occasionally.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
So there is a procedure where that's actually invasive and quite painful, where you're
Yeah.
kept awake, and they
Yeah.
inject they take a big ass needle and pump
Yep.
your disc full of fluid so that and
Yeah.
that's how does that hurt? Does that hurt?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's called provocative. Yeah. You're referring to provocative discography because the doctors obviously have always wanted to know which disc is causing the pain. And they inject a needle into the disc, they pressurize that disc, and they just go down the column, the vertebral, discs, to find out which one makes the patient jump off the table in pain. And
Right.
that's the one, I'll treat that one. Well, that's highly subjective, it's invasive, it's incredibly painful, and it's expensive. So, and there are it's invasive type risks to it. So we've been able to objectively measure the pain biomarkers without having the patient, or the payer for that matter, go through all of that relatively medieval procedure. And we've got lots of people that have utilized provocative discography because of the benefits of it, who have compared NOCI-SCAN, which is the name of our test, our scan, compared NOCI-SCAN to provocative discography, the quote gold standard of identifying discogenic pain, and it correlates very favorably to it. And it is my belief that because of the objective nature of those biomarker chemicals in our measurements, it's likely superior to that of provocative discography. But I don't need to make that claim. We don't need to do that, from a scientific perspective. We're just going to leapfrog that comparative to the gold standard, and we're going to do an outcomes trial. Well, we're actually doing an outcomes trial right now, our second outcomes trial. The first was a single surgeon, single site called the Gornet trial. And you might remember the difference after 1 year of the surgeries that took place that matched the NOCI-SCAN levels. The outcomes jumped to 97% positive outcome versus 54% where there was a mismatch. That was the 1 year outcome. And then that
Wow.
was durable, a little bit less at 2 years, but 1 year is really the sweet spot on that one. So we've taken that single surgeon, single site trial, and we've expanded it to what we're calling the Clarity trial. The Clarity trial is a national randomized multi-site, multi-physician trial. It's being led by Nick Theodore of Johns Hopkins University and other luminary sites like Northwestern, Advocate Aurora, Texas Back Institute, University of Miami, Scripps, and USC are all participating in this trial. And we're taking 300 patients. 150 of those patients will be, the surgeon will see the NOCI-SCAN result and will be able to treat accordingly. They don't have to follow it, but they can. The other 150, the other cohort, they'll be blinded to the NOCI-SCAN. So we'll be comparing at 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, the outcomes of both blinded versus unblinded, but also, like the Gornet trial, matched versus unmatched treatment levels to the NOCI-SCAN results. This is going to show, I think, definitively that using NOCI-SCAN improves outcomes. And that's what we ultimately need, that type of evidence, that commitment to ground truth, outcomes truth, to take to the payers and ultimately get reimbursement.
And that's what it all comes down to, right? Is the
Of course.
reimbursement. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Nothing gets to standard of care in healthcare without reimbursement. We need the payers to really be shoulder to shoulder with us as we try to solve these big, you know, socioeconomic, healthcare economic problems that are out there to help us solve the opioid addiction crisis. The payers have to come on board, and I understand they have their processes. They're not, like nobody works for free, right? And I'm a free market capitalist. I believe that everyone is entitled to make a fair profit along the way. But when we see a problem like this societally, globally, I think all the players that are involved in healthcare almost have a moral obligation to lean in with their expertise, with their resources to help make it happen. I know we have. And our investors certainly have. And I'm thankful for every dollar that's been invested in this company. And I rejoice in all that we've learned along the way here, because we're going to apply it every day as we move forward. It's
You know,
it's an important thing we're working on.
that is reason we're here. Well, there's a couple of reasons we're here. Number one, I think the product is an absolute need. It solves a need, right? It improves the quality of life for people that are suffering. It
Yeah,
makes the clinician's job easier, right? I mean, it
sure.
helps identify the real problems as
Yeah,
opposed to taking a stab that it might be this. You actually have very clear data that says it's this.
right, right. And it's objective. And listen, I think if you look at AI in healthcare, and in particular AI in radiology, you listen to Peter Arduini of GE Healthcare today. They're touting they're the number one AI healthcare company out there. And listen, I used to work with Peter and at GE, and I love the company, and I love what they're doing there, and I believe them. They're leaning into this AI thing. And if a company as sophisticated as GE and frankly Siemens and Philips are leaning into AI in radiology, and the radiology community is absolutely leaning in on the benefits of AI, um, we're right in the sweet spot here. And by the way, let's look to my other former employer, HeartFlow, which has just successfully done their IPO, and they're sitting at over a 2.2 billion dollar market cap valuation, for good reason. They've got the evidence. They went through the KOL advocacy, the evidence creation, the market access work to translate all of that into revenue and attract the fundamental investors. And that company is I think, a hallmark of success for what other AI in radiology companies can do if they're disciplined about following the same, roadmap to standard of care. And I promise you, Tim, and everyone who's watching this podcast, we are as disciplined as any company has ever been about the dollars we spend and what we spend it on. It is exactly the things that we need to do to get to that payer positive coverage decision and turn this into, a good, fair margin, good high margin, SaaS based AI healthcare tech company.
So anybody that's listening that thinks, "Oh my God, you just said the Clarity trial. You just said we're going to do testing at 2, 8, and what 2 years."
Yeah. Yeah.
When did the Clarity trial start?
It started. We've already enrolled patients. Patients have already gone through surgery, so the clock's ticking,
Okay,
and
so
we're
how
going to
long
have.
is it supposed to go in duration, Brent?
Yeah, so it'll ultimately culminate and be written on the 1 year primary outcome. That's the primary endpoint, is
Yep.
outcomes at 1 year. We'll track it through to 2 years, but that means that when you get your timeline out there, you've got, the surgery has to take place, and then 3 months after the surgery, we take an outcome measurement, then 6 months, then a year. But we'll have preliminary knowledge of how these patients are doing, how these cohorts are separating. And I'll give you a call, and we'll get back on, and you'll just see by the smile on my face how that trial's going.
Well, so
Ultimately, we'll be publishing those results, probably in late 2026, early 2027 will be the
okay,
published
2026.
results.
But here's the silver lining though. In Europe, it's a different story.
Yes, in Europe, we have coverage in London. We've got three of the four largest private insurance companies in conjunction with the London Clinic, which is a renowned spine center of excellence in the London market. And there, we're seeing a nice uptick in volume. We've got reimbursement, so physicians can order it, and it's standard. It's moving towards a standard. We're doing the kind of the traditional sales work over there. My colleague Ryan Bond, our chief strategy officer, is going to be there next week. I'm going to be there 2 weeks later, and then we're both going back in October, early October. So, and we're going to hire somebody in that market here shortly to really drive the just the understanding in the physician community that this test is available, and it's going to help them. So
Right.
so we should, when you think about catalysts to look at when you evaluate Aclarion, look for scan volume growth in general, scan volume growth in particular in London, in that market, and then look for real world evidence, both the Clarity trial, whenever we can publish on that, we will, but also other real world evidence that builds on the story and the confidence that the insurance companies can apply to this being efficacious. And we've got multiple real world studies that are in place right now. They're going on, and the physicians that are leading those will be writing up and publishing, and they'll be peer reviewed. So peer reviewed publications of real world evidence, the Clarity trial, and of course, scan volume growth in London. Those are the value catalysts that I'd point everyone to watch our press releases, watch what we're doing on those fronts, because that follows that exact journey that gets to the kind of market cap that my proxy company is enjoying today.
So, I mean, I guess here's what I want to emphasize. It has been a rough road for shareholders. It's been a rough road for the executive team.
Yeah.
Um, but this is a good example, and I talk about a lot that the capital markets can be unforgiving, especially in the small and micro cap space. It's not a level playing field. When you are a small company that's not cash flow positive, that's not you it depends on what zone you're in. I mean, there are times when companies like that can raise as much money as they want to raise. And then there are times like what we've just gone through for the last 5 years that they see you coming a mile away and they're gonna screw you. I'm sorry, but that's no other better way to say it. I mean, that's just how it is. And it's unfortunate, it's sad, because I always think to myself, well, if this company dies and goes away and it has this really incredible product that can improve the quality of life, it isn't because management screwed it up, it's because the capital markets screwed it up.
I said earlier in the interview that I'm thankful for every dollar that we have and that we've been able to invest in this technology, and I am. And yes, some of it has come with some terms that would have I would have had been happy with more favorable terms. But
That's a
we
good way.
started this
That's
thing
a
with
good way of saying it. Like we
yeah,
know, he says you're going to
yeah,
sleep with the fishes. I mean, I mean,
yeah,
look, you could get better terms,
yeah.
and I know I understand what you're doing. You're doing a very delicate dance. I don't have to. I'm an investor,
Fair
so I
enough.
can say whatever I want. Bottom line is, this is what I want retail investors to understand, and it's what there are times where retail investors I don't think understand that if you're a company that's trying to survive, and if you've never ran a company, you wouldn't know this because you just haven't been put in that position. But you're trying to survive, and you need cash. And you look, you could have gotten cash at a reasonable terms, but then something changes in the markets, and then all of a sudden you can't, and the terms are not in your favor, and they can be very, very painful. And then you get the ratchets, and you get the roofers, and you get all this stuff
Yeah,
that
yeah,
locks you in to basically a death spiral is
yeah,
what happens, right?
yeah. You go into survival mode
Yeah.
for sure. Yep.
And then some guys can't navigate their way out.
Right.
You have. And this is what look, I pay attention. Did I want to put a bunch of investors in front of this thing when it was going to get really painful? No, I didn't. I did. I
So,
want you to survive. Absolutely, I did.
yeah.
Right. And you're here. I think now. I think with the market doing what it's doing, I think that there are at least signs to me that the small caps are starting to show life.
Yeah, here's the good news from our part of this story, that today we've got over 12.5 million in cash on hand. That's cash flow that gets us all the way through the preliminary results of that Clarity trial. So we're going to know. We're going to know, does this thing really work? And
Does it?
we'll be able to have the evidence to take forward. So we've got cash on hand, we've got zero debt, we've got no near-term warrant overhang. We're fully NASDAQ compliant to both shareholder equity and price. I haven't looked at the price yet today, but I suspect it's somewhere in the $7 and some cents range. So we got lots of
Seven
room
dollars
there.
and 12 cents.
Okay, 7.12 today. Good. And I'm going to just set all of that aside because that's Wall Street stuff.
Yep.
What we're going to do today is we're going to go back and execute on the evidence on patient adoption and the same fundamentals that I talked to you about 3.5 to 4 years ago, Tim, and nothing's changed on that front. And I'll say this: if you want to help this company and you know somebody that is suffering from chronic low back pain,
Yep.
go to our website. We have sites in the United States today and in Europe today that you can go get an OC scan. And I would encourage you to talk to your doctor, have them call me, call the info at aclarion.com phone number. We will set that patient up. And frankly, the more knowledge that people have about how they can help their doctors help them, I think the better the journey is going to be.
Amen. So
Yeah. Yeah.
this is. I don't know if you noticed. Back when we originally met, it was Alpha Wolf Trading, which was a very transactional name. I've
Mm.
recently
Mm.
come to this. It all has hit me over this duration of this last 5 painful years that it isn't necessarily. I wanted to make retail investors better investors, and that's a challenging thing to do in today's environment because everybody wants instant gratification.
Yeah.
Investing is not an instant gratification thing. It is a
Right.
often a very very long and arduous patience thing. But you identify companies. I have always tried to identify companies that are going to make a positive impact on humanity in some
Yeah.
way.
The ESG thing, right? I mean,
Right. So
yeah.
you look at that, and then and then of course politics and politicians, they take things to the extreme. I just like logic. Logic works for me, right? So if people are in a lot of pain from, if that's the number one cause of chronic pain in the United States, and then you don't have a procedure that really clearly identifies what is causing that pain, and then you have a non-invasive thing come out that's getting smarter every day because it's artificial intelligence. To me, that's a need. That's not a want, right? This is a need.
It certainly is a need if you're the one suffering or living with someone that's suffering. And yes, it's a cash pay situation today at the sites that we have that are up and live and taking cash pay patients. I wouldn't let any of my loved ones get surgery without getting
Now,
an OC scan. I just
absolutely.
wouldn't. I just
Why
wouldn't,
would you?
because why
Right?
would you when you know the outcome spread, the positive outcome spread, and the fact that we're spending 6% of all fusion surgeries in the United States. There's about
What
635,000
what do those
fusion
surgeries run
surgeries.
on average? Do you know?
Yeah, the cost on that is anywhere from 35,000 up to 78,000, depending on the number of levels. And disc replacement surgeries are a little less expensive, but um, when you think about what those surgeries are doing, um, you don't want to do it twice. You don't want a revision surgery, and that math is what extrapolates 6% of 635,000 fusion surgeries, times that mid-range on the price gets you to $2.2 billion dollars spent on fusion or revision surgeries. You don't want to do that twice. You want it to be done right the first time. And I was on the phone with a media person the other day who went through a fusion surgery, one level, about 7 years ago. She had a wonderful experience. So it's not that we should be afraid of surgery.
Right.
For the right patient at the right level, it can be life changing in
Right.
a very positive way. And she was a great story, a testimony to the fact that it can be a wonderful thing that changes people's lives for the better. We're just here to help with the puzzle
Okay, sure.
pieces. Let's just check the things off that we can know before we go into that surgery. And
Yep.
that's why our KOL team
Which is
has been
something that you were
involved and
on.
engaged with us
You were on
from the
that from the
beginning.
very beginning. I mean,
Yeah,
you were getting KOLs very
yeah,
early on, right? And I mean,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
you've got all that established now.
yeah,
As you explained it to me before we hopped on, it is a system. It's of basically building a pyramid, right? That's it. That's
yeah.
kind of how you described it to me.
Yeah, that's really our true north to the strategy. It's, you have to have KOL advocacy, meaning, the Sigurd Bervens of UCSF, the Dean Carhelios of Advocate Aurora, the Alpesh Patels of Northwestern, the Dean, Nick Theodores of Johns Hopkins, the Juan Uribe of the BN. These are the men and women that go to the podium and are there to really educate the field on the science that they're engaged with.
Yep.
So without that KOL advocacy, why would anyone, like, nobody's going to listen to me about it there, but they will listen to them,
Right.
and they should listen to them, because these are thoughtful leaders that every company, even the big Medtronics and Alphatech and Johnson, we all have our KOLs
Yep.
that lean in and help us do better. And early on, because we didn't have the dollars to go launch that national randomized control trial, we focused on those KOL relationships. And I can tell you, they have borne fruit for us on multiple levels. Most notably, I think we've all gotten smarter in their presence and in their interaction around this technology. So it starts with KOL advocacy. That then follows into evidence, published, peer-reviewed journal articles, so the science backs up what we're saying. And then the clinical economic analysis of applying this technology to the real world modeling. That's
Yep.
been done. We've had that published. It was called the eval trial, and it's published. And if you go to our website, all of our peer-reviewed published articles are there. The eval showed a dominant conclusion, meaning not only is the use of NOCI-SCAN improve the patient outcome, but it reduces costs for the healthcare system-wide. So again, that's an independent healthcare economic PhD named Leslie Wilson who drove that study. So we're doing all the things that really the healthcare community requires of a disruptive technology to move from novel idea to standard of care.
Okay. So let's talk about the MRI manufacturers that you're currently
Yeah.
work with or on.
Yeah, so we're completely validated with Siemens. We've been with Siemens from the beginning. We've successfully done trial or scans in our history with GE, but
Okay.
that was early on, and we've got work to do there. We're validating the Philips scanner today. There are patients being scanned today by another KOL down in Louisiana, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Pierce Nunley, and he is doing a validation trial, 20 cases, comparing to provocative discography again to ensure that the results that we get from Siemens are replicatable with Philips.
Okay.
That spectral data that comes out.
Yep.
So we're halfway through that trial roughly, and it's going well. I'm not going to step on his publication, but but we feel good about that. And those relationships with the MRI manufacturers are going to be really important for us to get, tightly entwined with their software releases, our software releases, making sure that the customer experience, which at the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to. The radiology team,
Yeah.
the referring physicians, and the patients need to make sure that Philips and Aclarion are working together to produce the results, in the most accurate and efficient way possible. And we've got a wonderful relationship with the team at Siemens. Again, Ryan and I were in Erlangen, Germany, just a couple months ago, meeting with them at their MR manufacturing facility, and a beautiful place, and a lot of really smart people working on this problem
And
with
you
us.
have relationships at GE. There was
Of course, yes,
nothing that
yes.
happened at GE with the first trials that nothing bad that happened that pushed
Nothing
it
bad.
away.
Yeah, nothing bad. And some of this just comes down to, how does data get collected, stored, and moved?
Yeah.
And if they had made a change to more of a proprietary type, I guess, storage of data and movement of data that didn't really match with the way that we were receiving the data. Listen, I've talked to Kelly Londy, the CEO of GE MRI, on this front. She said, "Well, let's find a customer together and go work this thing out." So,
Yeah.
and Kelly and I worked together when I was at GE and at Philips, and she wants nothing more. Kelly, if you're watching this, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but she wants nothing more than to take good care of her customers
Right.
at the end of the day. So as we prove our market viability, I have no question that the MRI manufacturers are going to do nothing but continue a nice, tight relationship with us. Why wouldn't they?
Brett, I asked you at the beginning of this, I said, this is before we hopped on. I said, if you knew that you were going to go through the last 4 years that you just went through, will you still have done it? And the bottom line is I have mad respect for you for sticking
Okay.
in, because I know retail investors can be very unforgiving, and they can be very punishing, and they don't really fully understand all the dynamics of everything. And I'm not trying to bash retail investors. I'm just saying this is the reality of it. You
Yeah.
didn't know what it was going to be like when you came on board, and you just had no clue how things can get within the capital markets. And it's rough. It's rough. But and it's been painful for the shareholders, and
Yeah,
anybody
it
who's
has.
been in it will say that. And I'm not trying to ignore that, but I am going to say this. You are now, I would say, you are a seasoned, more chiseled,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Uh, I think you are now kind of through the rough stuff, and you're starting to see the glimmers of hope that are becoming reality. Europe is a good example. When
Yeah.
you get the data done with the Phillips, that'll be another example, right?
Yeah.
And then when you
Yeah.
get GE, that'll be another example.
Yeah.
And I would say, would you say that maybe the tough road, the bulk of the tough road is kind of behind you?
Um, I think that we've got a lot of work yet to do. I honestly do, Tim, and I'm not trying to
Yep,
skirt
I
you,
get you.
but listen, I think some of the messy stuff might be behind us. And again, I said earlier, I rejoice in what we've learned, because I think it's going to make us better prepared to move forward. The message I'd send to everybody out there is, you know, so, sometimes you're called to something. And when Jeff Trayman, our executive chairman, called me and asked me to take this job before we knew that, the markets were going to crash and all that other stuff, it was the alignment of my experience in both spine and imaging and this SaaS based model that that really compelled me to want the job. And none of that has changed. None of that has changed.
Oh, your
And
passion is very clear.
we're undaunted. We're undaunted by what has occurred. And frankly, I said it to the team just yesterday on a call. Um, our purpose is more important than our comfort. And and that's why we're here. So
I love
I hope there are shareholders out there that you know think about what is this company trying to do in spite of their challenges and can join us on the journey on a long, a little bit longer view, because creating long-term shareholder value is aligned perfectly with our social responsibilities as well as the economic opportunity for everybody on this team too. It's not like we don't want the stock to go up. Of course, we want it to go up.
You
um,
know what? It's funny because there was another healthcare company I just recently uh, interviewed, and they have a product that's a blood volume analyzer, which is
mhm, sure.
something that is really underutilized, but it's been around
Yeah,
for since like 1970. Like it's crazy, right? So the Department of Defense, but it's a kind of a bulky machine, and not everybody uses it. Not everybody runs the tests, and it's got the nuclear portion to it, where that's the thing that they track through your body, and
sure.
it's very accurate. It's 98% accurate, and it is very identical to almost what you have, which is it helps you to identify the real problem that the patient is having,
Yeah,
right? Before you start to mistreat, because you have other symptoms that you see and you think that that's what the problem is, but it turns out that's not the problem that needs to be solved, right? So very fascinating to me because I listened to them. They've got this now. They just came out with this smaller handheld unit that's cordless that they can
yeah,
literally have bedside. And in my head, I'm listening to them and I'm saying, what, they check my pulse, they check my blood pressure when I go in. Why wouldn't they use this thing to do your original? Because over time, right? That's how they would know that this is where he was at. This is where he is
sure.
today, right? I looked at
There's,
this.
go ahead.
Go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
just going to say there's an intersection here that's occurring with improving the diagnosis, right, and understanding where we need to target the therapies.
Yes.
So there's a biopharma play in many respects. There's certainly a pain management and surgical in our world. In the cardiology world, is this patient right to go to the cath lab? What medications might we put somebody who's got a heavy plaque burden, particularly the vulnerable necrotic core kind of plaque? Like all of these things are hinging on better data, better
Yes.
information that can be translated from its complex origins to a actionable, insightful bit of clinical information that we can take action on. So the I'm completely thrilled just as a human about the advancements that are being made on how we can better personalize the treatment of people of a wide variety of ailments and diseases. We live
What's
in
really
fascinating times.
what's really key, and this is where human beings kind of suffer, I guess. We're not very good at adopting new technology. We're not very good. The adoption curve is very long.
Yeah,
Even when things are extremely obvious, and I found this to be in many different industries. It's not just healthcare; it's everywhere. I mean, you can have something that saves lives, and that means something to somebody when it's somebody that is when it's either you or someone that is close to you. When you hear
yeah,
somebody saves lives, it's like, oh, that's cool, but it doesn't really take hold until it's really somebody that you know, right? If
yeah,
I can save somebody I know's life, then that's a whole different story. You've got my attention.
yeah.
There,
Well, the GE cap training would say that the need to change needs to be greater than the desire to stay the same.
right.
So you almost need a little crisis,
It,
to change behavior.
you're absolutely right. That is, if I look back at history, what is it that makes change really happen? What makes that adoption happen. Well,
Yeah.
there are times when you get forced, right? You have no choice
Right.
because they make it law. You're going to wear a seatbelt. That's it.
Right.
No more questions
Well,
asked, right?
and Tim, bringing this back home, in healthcare, it's the pre-authorization that really ultimately drives adoption across the chasm
And
of
that's why the
users.
code and the reimbursement is so important.
Exactly. Nothing gets to standard of care without reimbursement. And the journey to reimbursement it's a difficult and expensive one. Now that may be where we can get better as a society. It's this death valley between FDA clearance, or your regulatory approval, and a reimbursed environment,
Yeah.
because that's a chicken or the egg, right? And again, back to that comment I made earlier, nobody works for free. So, how can we shorten that cycle? And I'm not saying lower the bar.
No.
I'm not saying lower the safety bar. I'm not saying lower the evidence bar per se, but I am saying if we put some energy as a society into how to shorten that time frame between regulatory and reimbursement, I think society would be better off on
And
multiple fronts,
this
not
is
just my
where
own company's
everyday
technology,
Joe,
but a lot of them.
this is where everyday Joe investor, this is where
Yeah,
everyday anybody. I mean, I look at the time that is spent on trying to make yourself part of something to make a statement, rallies, all this other crap that really, if you think about it, consumes a lot of time, creates a lot of dysfunction within society. And then what does it actually accomplish? Nothing. You
yeah,
feel like you're part of something. Okay, I get that. But you know
yeah,
what? There are a bunch of companies just like Aclarion that literally can make the world a better place. And nobody knows about them. Nobody. You're not going to
yeah.
see them on CNBC. You're not going to
No,
see them on Bloomberg. If you do, it'll be for 10 seconds. What are they going to tell you about their company in 10 seconds? Nothing. So that is what happens. You have these amazing companies doing amazing things that can make people or maybe yourselves lives better, right? Live
yeah,
without pain. I mean, get the right diagnosis. I mean, there are so many things out there, and I'm not just talking about a Clarion. There are a lot of companies. If we all focused on these companies and what they do and said, hey, did you know that you could go here? I mean, that's how you make an impact. That's how you make a difference in the world.
yeah. I agree, Tim, and you're doing good work here at Alpha Wolf Impact Club. I think it's important, and I've really appreciated the open forum and just free flowing conversation we've been able to have. It helps me make all sorts of points that are always rattling around in my brain that I wish I could articulate better and more concisely. But I think that there's a sector here. It's a little mini sector, and it's the radiology information to the cloud and back. That sector of the economy, now with HeartFlow doing such a great job of leading the way in terms of establishing there's real value here, clinical, economic, and shareholder value that can be created in this sector. And if the companies in the sector are disciplined to doing what needs to be done, then that sector in and of itself, I think, is going to continue to rise and add value across the value chain.
Let me ask you a question. You were first at Heart. Is it Heartflow? Is that what you said? Heartflow.
HeartFlow. Yep.
You were there. You understand that clinical need, right?
Intimately. Yep.
So on a comparison level, where does a Clarion fall into that?
Sure. Sure. No, it's a great question. More people die of heart attack and heart disease than any other ailment, right? And
Right.
someone's having a heart attack, you know, every 5 seconds, someone is having a heart attack. So that market is very acute in terms of the mortality rates in it.
Okay.
But but the back pain market is larger, meaning more people suffer and more dollars are spent on the diagnosis and treatment of back pain than any other ailment out there. So, listen, they're both incredibly important
Right.
segments, incredibly important. But the cardiology space gets a lot of attention because of the acuity of the result. I mean, the first symptom of heart disease half the time is death.
Wow.
So, you
Right.
know, people could be walking around, perfectly good shape, great athletes, but their family history has, an issue with plaque, and that soft plaque breaks through, and it's over.
Yep.
So I love I love the way that Clearly, I also worked at Clearly. I love the way that they really kind of turned the attention first off into plaque analysis from the FFRCT that HeartFlow was very focused on. Now they both kind of merged into similar product portfolios, addressing the whole matter. Both really great, great teams, great companies, working on important things. Elucid is another company out of Boston that's in that space, that is taking a little different approach at what the ground truth is from histology perspective. So I'd encourage you to look at all three of those companies. HeartFlow is the only publicly traded company at this time in that space, but I consider us all kind of part of that sector, though, because it's radiology information as the raw material, and then we're adding our expert systems in the cloud, and then it's coming back to the referring physician to make better treatment decisions. Ultimately, that's save money and improve patient care.
Brent, what are the things that, so here's what I'm going to suggest. So the stock has gone through a series of reverse splits. Had to do it, or else it was, get kicked off the Nasdaq.
Right,
That's the reality of it, right?
right.
Um, but the stock has shown signs of stabilization for a while now. It looks to be
We've had a
like,
good 3 months. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it doesn't look to me like anybody's really in control of the stock. It just looks like it's kind of in a wait and see mode, right?
that's right.
Uh, this is going to be interesting, but how many shares outstanding, fully diluted, do you guys have?
It's right around 580,000, so it's pretty low number.
That's fully
Yeah,
diluted, by the way. Is
yeah,
that fully
yeah,
diluted? Wow. All right.
yeah.
So look, at some point, so as you might imagine, with the stock that has 580,000 shares, which is in my head is like nothing, like literally almost nothing, right? It wouldn't take much of a positive press release to send this thing probably on a really crazy run, like
Mhm,
super crazy run, because
mhm.
that's what happens, especially if small caps come back. If that whole sector of small companies, because then you start getting, companies that run 300-400% in a week on a,
Yeah,
on a fairly consistent basis, because that sector is
yeah,
in play. We haven't been in play like that for a long, long time. Uh, but I do see signs. I see signs, and I have companies that are moving in the right direction. Uh, and I haven't seen that in like over 5 years. So this is
yeah,
exciting to me. I think where you are right now, Brent, is exciting. I think you have data that will be coming out, right? I mean, you're not going to
yeah.
just go through the whole clarity trial and not have any data.
No, no, no. You're going to see us publish real world evidence, or it won't even be us publishing it. It'll be the KOLs that write the papers, that get peer reviewed, that go out and get published. So, if you see a press release from us on a peer reviewed published, that's a big deal,
Right.
because it plays to the evidence that we have to. And if it's validating our technology, then it just increases the likelihood of every other trial, right?
Right.
It just validates the fact that the thing works.
So Positive news from Phillips would be good. That'd be another validator, right?
Sure, sure.
GE
Yeah,
would be
proud
another
of that one.
validator.
Yep, yep.
Okay. What else could people look for as positive catalyst for the stock?
I would say quarter over quarter scan volume growth
Okay.
is another one, particularly in the London market. If you
Okay.
see the London market growing, that says that when this thing is reimbursed, there's right there's meaningful opportunity as a microcosm of the global market that the economics will work. Um, those are really the big things. Evidence,
Yep.
clarity adoption. So the numbers of clarity people coming through the trial, meaning that we're on pace to get that clarity trial done. Other real world
You
evidence.
have to do X amount of patients to get the thing done, right? Is
Yep,
that how it works?
300. We could stop at 150 if the evidence is just like we're gonna, but I don't want to stop it because that's also raw material data that I
Yep.
can use to build on the algorithms. So
Yep.
so I want I
So
want the
so
300.
this is how patients or potential people listening, this is how they could help you shorten the length and duration of that trial. Is if you had more people that signed up, right?
Yes, certainly. And there if you go to our website, you'll see, info@aclarion.com. If you live in any of those markets and you're suffering from back pain and you want to join the Clarity trial, the physician, principal investigator at each of these sites would be happy to talk to you, and I'd love to have you in there. And we'll make sure that the patient selection criteria is pretty, specific. So you'd have to fit within that. But if you don't fit within the um, that selection criteria for the Clarity trial, you can still go get an OC scan, and that's the other thing. It's a
Oh
cash
yeah,
pay situation, and you could go get it, and that volume helps us too.
right. Okay, so that's a couple of ways that look,
Yeah,
maybe you don't want to buy the stock, maybe you want to just see how things go. That's fine. I would suggest, and this is kind of my new thing, Brent, buy a share. Buy
sure.
a share, right? I mean, that way
Yeah,
you are invested, so you will pay attention to what's happening with the company, right?
yep,
And then if it takes off, maybe you have the opportunity to add to your position, right?
right.
However, with 500,000 shares outstanding, that's going to be a challenge. So you may want to buy 10 shares instead of one.
Yeah, I was just gonna say for $70, I think you could probably come in and take 10 shares. Yeah.
But I say one share because my job is not to tell people what to buy and what to sell. I mean, that's really not what I try to do. What I try to do is show people a very compelling story and a reason why you could feel good about getting behind it and supporting it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's really what it's about to me. It's like, yes, we could have a huge win in our portfolio from this if you're patient. Not a lot of patience anymore out there. Everybody wants instant gratification.
right.
Investing is a patience game. And if you think that this company can improve the lives of people, then and improve humanity ultimately, then this is something you can feel really good about getting behind, either as a brand ambassador or it doesn't have to always be investing. It can be in many, many different forms that you support a company, right?
Yeah. We'll
So,
we'll take all the goodwill we can get.
right. And I think you deserve it, Brent. I like I said, you have you have taken some heat. But look, this is not all under your control. And believe me, if anybody wanted things to go work out differently, I'm pretty sure it was Brent Ness.
Yeah, well, and the team, I mean, I haven't gone through any of this alone, and that's also a blessing. We've got a great team here that's stuck through this thing 100%.
Yeah,
Like nobody's left.
because it's that important to them, right?
Yeah,
It's that
yeah.
important
I
to
mean,
them.
we have our CFO is retiring, but that's you can't fault a guy for that. He's been he's been a great asset to the organization, and we're in the process of hiring his replacement. Um, So you'll see an announcement come out on that when we get
Brent,
that
we
final
haven't been
offer
engaged
accepted.
for quite a while, but I think now is time that we start to re-engage. Maybe when you have some of that data that comes out or peer review, you
Yep,
come in and you just give everybody an update and let everybody know what that means,
I'd
right?
love to do it. Yep, I'd
Okay,
love to
my
do it,
friend.
Tim.
I appreciate you. Listen, anybody that's watching, go to their website, sign up for their investor alerts. You know, that way you're paying attention to what's happening with the company. I think that they're in a good. You just said you don't have any need to raise capital. You've got enough to get you through the clarity trial. We can help.
Yep.
We can help shorten the time length on that trial.
Yeah, yeah.
So pay attention to this story because I think it's a good one. One thing that hasn't changed from 4 years ago to today is how you feel about the product. You were passionate then, you're passionate now. You really want to help people live a better quality of life.
I'm more deeply committed today after having gone through that than I was 4 years ago.
There you go. All right, Brandon, it was a true pleasure. Anything you feel like I missed?
No, no, you do a great job here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
All right. Okay, hold on one second. I'm gonna shut this off. Thank you for tuning in to another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Capital. Today we had Brent Ness, CEO of Aclarion, ticker symbol ACON. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? While you're at it, make sure you smash that subscribe button. All of those things are extremely important to us here at Alpha Wolf Capital, and we appreciate you taking the time to do that. Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Capital wishes you the very best of success.